Right. Now, let me see. I'm still a little bit of a work in progress here. Why is that not coming up as live? Anyway, I guess I'm live. Let me just press this button. Forgive me if there we go. Good progress here. There we go. All right, good. Okay, great. All right. Well, yeah. So, hi, Jeff Salzman here. Welcome to the Daily Evolver Live. I'm normally here with Encore Delight, my co-host, who is on a retreat this week. So it's just me. And I thought what I'd do is just walk through my Twitter. And I like Twitter. I talk about it a good bit on the Daily Evolver. It's a good place for people to get in various arenas and fight. And fighting, evolution likes fighting. We fight our way forward. And to the degree that we're fighting on Twitter and not in physical space, meat space, that is very much to the good. So anyway, I'm going to share screen here. And the way I do that, oh, look at my hair. I got it up. I didn't really realize that. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, go over to Safari and share it. I might as well share sound in case there's something to play. All right. So here's the first one. It's and this is a good example of how I think Twitter is serving, and other social media too, which I don't have that much firsthand. I don't use them. But this is a guy that I've been following on Twitter for several years, and he just really sort of came on strong. He's got 13,000 followers now. And, that's a good sized Twitter audience. And to sustain an audience like that, you have to be paying attention. You have to tweet a lot and you have to have a worldview. And, I like Carl because his tag is history boomer. He's a boomer history professor. And I like that he is intelligent. He has, lots of knowledge about things. And he is willing to criticize the left. He's willing to criticize the right. That's always going to sit well with me. But he's missing development. And so anyway, he puts up a tweet that says lefties are correct to call out the horrible things America has done, but they forget that many governments commit evil. The Belgian Congo, Myanmar against Rohingya, Sudan against Christians and Africans, Serbia and Bosnia, Syria versus its own people. And then globally, he says, America is nicer than average. And so I respond and say, what did I say? Yes, the more developed, the more nice. And, you can see that, and this is just the general, to me, confusion that even the leading edge of culture is working out this idea that Carl would try to make a point about the Belgian colonization of the Congo versus America now. I mean, America did slavery, so America is as bad as it gets in that territory, but that was 1860s that ended, and then so the more developed, the more nice is what you get when you bring consciousness and cultural development to the party and organize things and see that the more developed the culture is, the less violence it has, the less crime it has, the more decent the people live. There's downside too. As we move into modernity, become soulless. That's a bit of a price to pay. At Integral, we want to be soulful and we want it all. We want it all back. And that's the integration. But just to try to, I see people trying to sort out, well, this country did this and this country, every country did everything when they were red, when they were blue or amber, traditional, violent, endless wars. What happens is modernity. Modernity pacifies the world. It's like, is it astonishing that some of the most welcoming people in the world to Americans are the Japanese and the Vietnamese? I have friends who travel to both places. They say they love Americans. When you're modern, you don't care what your grandfather did to my grandfather. That's, so anyway, I could go on and on, but I won't. I'll move along. I don't want to deal with that one. Well, maybe just a bit. Quickly, it's just Matt Iglesias, and he's pointing out that most people rate their own personal financial situation much better. That's the graph on the right, than they do America's economy, so the collective economy. And that's true in general, is that I'm not sure this is true in all cultures or at all stages, actually. But at the modern stage of development, most people see themselves as being better than the world. And so my tweet is, if somebody talked about themselves the way they talk about humanity, you'd suggest they see a therapist. In other words, the sort of collective self-hatred that people have, where they say, people are hopeless, people are corrupt, people are whatever. They wouldn't describe themselves that way, or if they did, again, you'd suggest they see a therapist. What I argue is that an integral view allows us to see the development of culture the way you see the development of a child. There's the magic, there's the mythic, there's the terrible twos, there's the be a good girl and a good boy, and then there's the teenage rebellion, and it doesn't always look like progress. Does it look like progress for a sweet little 10-year-old to turn into a surly, resentful 13-year-old? No, but it is. Anyway, we'll move along, because again, I can talk about any of these forever. Okay, here's this guy I've never seen before, Ami Dar. And you can see the bottom one is the first thing, and then the response is on top. That's a little trick of Twitter. But he says, part of humanizing someone that you've been taught to ignore is to try to see reality through their eyes. Yes, absolutely. He said, so last night I was thinking about a 30-year-old who has never left Gaza. Most have not. And I was thinking simply of the physical reality of this hypothetical person. And I believe this Ami Dar is Jewish. So he's talking about the people, the guy, young 30-year-old in Gaza. Of the fact that, for example, they've never seen or climbed a hill, much less a mountain. They've never walked through a forest or swam in a lake or a river. They've never seen snow. They've never been in a train or a subway or an airplane, but they know all of this and much more exists. And so imagine the longing, the desire to swim, to fly, to all caps, live. None of this changes anything, but if we can see each other, something can shift at some point. And so I responded to that by saying, yes, the practice of intentional perspective taking produces the fruit of integral consciousness. And that is, that is the calisthenics of development, and particularly moving into integral, where you're literally trying to look out through the eyes of other people. And then he follows up with this tweet saying, because he obviously got some blowback. You don't not get blowback on Twitter if you have a big account. I think he does. He says, and in this post, I'm not assigning or apportioning blame. This person lives in a reality co-created by Hamas, Israel, and Egypt, which she or he did not choose to be born into. One can empathize with them without getting defensive or offensive. So yeah, it's like you can look at anybody on any side of any conflict and look through their eyes, you know, and see how what they're doing makes absolute perfect sense to them, you know, or in what way it doesn't, or whatever. Anyway, so here's one. Twitter. It always comes from left field. This guy Chaos, whoever he is, he writes, "I have a message for you from God." He says, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but this is necessary." And it just touched me, you know, that God would say, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but this is necessary." A message to humanity. And I often wonder about that. You know, when you look at evolution and you look at the you know, the horrors of what bacteria do to each other, for God's sakes. You know, nature red in tooth and claw. And then we have to even think about the history of humanity and all of the ways that humans have tortured each other, you know, literally, in some cases, many cases. And did it have to be so rough? You know, on the children, on the innocents, the starvation, the disease, I mean, what's up with this particular universe? So my response to this was, okay, God, I guess we're just going to have to trust you, all capital Y-U. And that's where you land. It's like this catastrophe of life on Earth. I guess this is the game. We got to go with it and trust that whoever you know, dreamed it up is knows what they're doing. Okay, next. I don't think I want to land on that. Okay, here's another one where the, you know, developmental stages, unfolding history would help so much. Whoever this is writes, "Germany and Japan got leveled and rebuilt within a few decades and are fine places to live now. Singapore and Hong Kong get colonized and end up rich as a result of adopting more free market and Western principles. Next, Africa gets colonized, receives endless aid, still sucks, and the people leave." So my response is to just put those things in a developmental context. And I just say, at their time of conquest, Germany and Japan were modern. In the third person, they were modern. They had technology, they had science, they had you know, modern weaponry and modern societies in that way. That this is one of the sour spots of history, that both Germany and Japan had pre-modern interiors, that is, pre-modern cultural norms and even individual consciousness. Think of evolution as happening in first, second, and third person. So Germany and Japan, modern and third person, pre-modern, traditional, and earlier even, in first and second persons, where conquest is, so now you have conquest with modern weaponry. And so that's Germany and Japan. Singapore and Hong Kong were traditional when they were colonized, and Africa was a tribal and warrior. They have a lot more developmental distance to travel. I think that is obvious and simple, and if simple, you know, life isn't simple, but simple in terms of just how to think it through, and which then helps us all be more effective and you know, wise in how we relate to developing cultures, of course, including our own. All right. Next, we have somebody who's tweeting under the name of Alfred North Whitehead. And this is a quote from Whitehead from his book, Function of Reason. And the quote is, "Science," and I love this, "science has always suffered from the vice of overstatement. In this way, conclusions true within strict limitations have been generalized dogmatically into a fallacious universality." I don't know if that makes sense, but scientific conclusions true within strict limitations, and the strict limitations would be material. Is it third person? Can we see it, measure it, touch it, analyze it? The world that does that and delivers so much, which science does, but that the principles of that have been generalized dogmatically into fallacious universality. In other words, it says that what science also says, that there's nothing exists except this material reality. And that is, and then you see my tweet, my response to that is mean orange. And mean means every stage of development has its dignities and disasters, Ken Wilber says. And that people think of mean green, people think of mean amber or mean blue, but mean orange means that it's the modern world that reduces everything to material. And we don't realize that we would consider that to be the mean side of orange, because a lot of us actually grew up in that. I did, where I thought that, for a while I did, at least a decade or two in my late teens and 20s, that was the only thing that existed, and everything else, religion and magic and myth and all of these other realities that are part of the bigger universality, that they operate on different physics. They're different realities. They're non-material realities, but they're realities. And so I agree with that statement that Whitehead said. Okay, this is from the developmental politics, and this is the Institute for Cultural Evolution, and I'm on their board, and I love their tweets. Rigel and Steve McIntosh. And so they have a picture of Burning Man, and the tweet says, and I just retweeted this, I didn't add anything because I think it says it all. Progressive culture can only fully emerge and take root within societies that are both relatively wealthy and free, conditions created by the success of modernism. Without modernity's collective prosperity and personal liberties, progressivism is culturally unsustainable. And that, I just think that's just so right, that there is, that every stage creates a platform, a solid new reality that the next stage can come out of. But if that underlying reality gets threatened, the other one breaks down too. And, it's a classic kind of a pyramid. And that the fruit of modernity and the fruit of materialist, soulless science is that we became relatively wealthy and free. That's two of the markers of modern cultures, especially when you get in the first and second person modernity, which is all about individual liberty, freedom of speech. These were not what happened in Germany and Japan in their imperial stage. So anyway, so it just helps us to think about helps us to think about things in a more integral way, in that we're happy about progressivism, we're happy about modernity, we're happy about the whole spiral of development, and we want to befriend all of it and integrate it into the next stage beyond progressive postmodernity, which is integral. That's the whole thing we're doing here, after all. Okay, here's one. Somebody sends a video, and I'll play it. You can see it down here. It's just the same thing repeating. It's somebody, a guy that works in a train, and he's just brushing trash and litter off of the train onto the train tracks and to the, into the nature. And the question is, why are Indians like this? And again, so much of the cultural stuff that's going on, the fights in culture, are conflations of race and class and culture in, sort of a, what's the difference between an Indian culture and an American culture or a Filipino culture that would do something like this, just put trash out into the world. And it's a developmental stage also. And then so my tweet is, I have to go back to that, I guess. Share screen, Safari, there we go, yeah. My tweet is, it's a late traditional stage of development. I grew up at a country road in Pennsylvania in the 60s, and everybody threw their trash out their car window. Then Lady Bird did her Don't Be a Litter Bug campaign. Lady Bird was the first lady. She was Lyndon Johnson's wife. She did her Don't Be a Litter Bug campaign, and everybody stopped. Consciousness and culture evolved. And I remember that. I worked at a Tasty Freeze, and one of my jobs at the end of the night was to go out and do what we called pick the lot. And that is everybody, they'd come sit in their car and eat their food and then just throw their stuff out in the parking lot. That was everybody expected that. And not only that, but all along the roads too. And we lived in a country road. You were just about done with your McDonald's when you got to our house, and the whole place was trashed with that. So, and we occasionally would go up and down the road and fix it or pick it up. But then when Lady Bird came out with Don't Be a Litter Bug, and that was, whatever it was, the mid 60s, I guess. Yeah. And please, please don't be a litter bug. Please, please don't be a litter bug. Please, please don't be a litter bug, 'cause every litter bit hurts. I'll never forget that. I have a good mind for jingles. Okay. Oh, this I liked. Okay, this guy tweets, who I don't know, and he talks about Christopher Bach, B-A-C-H-E, Bakke, who I also don't know. But anyway, when asked about the most important insight from his 73 high-dose LSD sessions, this is what Christopher Bakke said. And again, I don't know who he is, but I love what he said. And what he said is, this is a hard question to answer. The most important, and again, the question is, what's the most important insight from 73 high-dose LSD sessions? The most important, that the universe is the manifest body of a divine being, of unimaginable intelligence, compassion, clarity, and power, and that we are all aspects of this being, never separated from it for a moment, that we are growing ever more aware of this connection, that physical reality emerges out of light and returns to light continuously, that light is our essential nature and our destiny, that all life moves as one, that reincarnation is true, that there is a deep logic and significance to the circumstances of our lives, that everything we do contributes to the evolution of the whole, that our awareness continues in an ocean of time and a sea of bliss when we die, that we are loved beyond measure, and that humanity is driving towards an evolutionary breakthrough that will change us and life on this planet that will change us and life on this planet at the deepest level. Take your pick. And I just love that. I think that is, having studied religions, that's a beautiful expression and transmission of the mystical truth of oneness and love as being the substance of the universe. So, we could talk about that forever too, but you're actually, the words are only fingers pointing to the moon. So anyway, this is another one from Developmental Politics or Institute for Cultural Evolution. This is from Steve McIntosh. I thought beautifully said, Steve. He says, Although science has provided credible naturalistic explanations for the cosmological evolution of matter and the biological evolution of life, it has not been able to explain how or why these distinct evolutionary domains came into being in the first place. Yep. Tells you how it works, but not why it happens. That is the domain of myth, religion, spirituality, non-material reality, intention itself, creativity. It's built into the universe too. The universe, you know, I don't know what happened, but my thinking about it is that when the Big Bang happened, or whatever preceded it, it emerged in first, second, and third person. So consciousness was there at the beginning, and it very kind of, you know, evolved into more complexity. Relationship, second person, things relating to each other, is itself a dimension of reality. And the stuff, third person, the material, is, we know all about that. But they all are evolving concurrently. Not always uniformly and in, you know, lockstep, as we see in history, where technology exceeds our first and second person. Okay, let's see. Okay, next is from James Lindsay, who is a character and a religious conservative, young. He says, I don't know who needs to hear this, but mysticism and magic rituals are definitely not based. So based is sort of the new term for the new traditionalists, who are religious and nationalistic and want to, you know, live in a more traditional kind of family circumstance, socially conservative. Based, that's the word for it. And he's saying mysticism and magic are not that. And that mysticism and magic, I guess from his perspective, mysticism and magic are kind of leaking into the based traditional worldview. And he's saying that they shouldn't. And my tweet back is, integralists don't need to hear this, because we already know that traditionalism, or based, emerged in opposition to magic and mystical world spaces and spent millennia stamping them out, or trying. So yeah, every stage wants to repress the previous one. Actually, they want to repress the emerging one too. Humans, huh? Okay. So here I was all excited about this, and then it all fell apart. So here's this guy texts or tweets from this Assyrian tablet from 2800 BC. Isn't that cool? You can see it there. It's cuneiform or whatever. But they're writing in this tablet, the earth is degenerating today. Bribery and corruption abound. Children no longer obey their parents. Every man wants to write a book, and it's evident that the end of the world is fast approaching. Every man wants to write a book. You'd think I would have noticed that. At any rate, so Twitter now has this thing called community notes, where readers can respond. And I don't know how it all works, but it's a way of correcting misinformation. And so readers added context that this tale of a tablet listing eerily familiar society criticisms has been in circulation for more than 100 years, since the early 1900s. There's no compelling evidence that the above quotation was really ascribed during ancient days in Assyria. And you'd think I would have noticed. But anyway, I said it's a deep psychic structure. And I still think that's true. I don't think this is evidence of it, this fake. But you know, people have always thought that the world is coming to an end, and they're often right from their perspective. And all of us worlds are coming to an end, at least this one, the one we're in. And so knowing we're mortal, which is the great sort of burden of self-consciousness, and, you know, the terrifying insight of I amness, that you're going to die. So we're seeing it, we project it onto the world and onto our culture. And so there's always that, idea floating around that we're going to hell. All right, I'm going to, I think, just end with this one because I really like this. And it's, and again, I love Twitter for this sort of thing. This is a shoebill crane walking down the stairs. And I just think that is so cool. All right, stop you now. And my tweet in response was, animals are people too. And that's a tweet I use often when I am really particularly touched by one of these animal videos that shows, wow, just when we talk about taking the perspective and looking through the eyes of other people, just seeing the reality of these amazing creatures that we live with. And, seeing that they're people too. And they have their own world and identities, and they're precious as well. All right. So, I think I'm good. That was fun. And sign up for my Twitter. Follow me on Twitter if you haven't already. And I'll see you here again. And Ankur will be back with me. And Ankur, I hope you're having a great retreat. And so we'll see you next week at same time, same station.